Welcome to The World Awaits.
Travel tales to inspire your wanderlust.
I'm Kirsty Bedford, journalist, editor and travel writer.
And I'm Belinda Jackson, author, travel journalist and columnist, and we're your weekly co-hosts.
Welcome back to The World Awaits. How are you all?
Hi, everyone.
I hope you had a good Easter and ate your body weight in chocolate like I did.
Yeah, if there was ever a time you were allowed to succumb to the sugar weakness, it's Easter and not being helped by having children because you have no choice but to have chocolate in the house.
Do you do an Easter egg hunt, Belle?
No, because we have dogs and one of them is uncontrollable around chocolate. I know it's poisonous, but she is, she's a danger to herself. Can I say, though, the real hunt for me was trying to find chocolate bilbies. I found some chocolate platypuses in my supermarket, but seriously, Coles, grow a spine and stock them, please. They're Australian. They're not an invasive species like rabbits. I mean, I know this is my thing, but yeah. Let me run with it.
Well, thankfully, my dog doesn't go for chocolate, although she eats practically everything else, including the cat food and any bits of food that the kids have dropped around place.
Mine eats socks. I have one that eats chocolate, the other one eats socks.
They're actually good vacuum cleaners. It's quite good because you notice when Kyla's not here, which isn't very often, that if you're dropping food around, not that I do that frequently, but that all of a sudden there's no one.
They tidy up.
Yeah, exactly. They tidy up. And while my kids aren't kids anymore, they're actually 15 and 18. They do love an Easter egg hunt, and they will kill me for saying this, but luckily teen boys aren't our target audience. And to be honest, if someone organised an Easter egg hunt for me, I would so be up for it, as long as there's cream eggs at the end and not those crappy little mini ones either.
Oh, I don't know. Just I'm so simple. Bring me a cup of tea in bed, maybe a hot cross bun,
Yum.
lightly toasted, lots of butter, and that will do me just fine, thank you.
Yeah, yum. So don't say we don't bring joy to your day with this podcast. First, it's a chat about chocolate. And now we're going to reveal the details of the World Happiest Report, because happiness and chocolate go hand in hand.
They certainly do. So the report is a partnership of Gallup, the Oxford Wellbeing Research Centre, the UN Sustainable Development Solution Network, and the World Happiness Report's editorial board. And the data is based on findings around GDP, per capita, social support, healthy life expectancy, freedom, generosity, and corruption.
Wow, what a list. And the top country was Finland, and it's the 7th time Finland has topped the list of the 10 happiest countries in the world. And I love this, but Visit Finland jumps straight on the bandwagon and is offering a free trip to teach people how to be happy. So you can win a trip to Finland in June, and to find out, we'll put a link in the show notes or just go to visitfinland.com.
I love this idea, and I love Finland. Love it so much. They are the butt of all jokes amongst other Scandinavian countries because they are reputably socially inept. But I do not believe that. They are wonderfully quirky. The country is spectacular. I spent Christmas there a couple of years ago, about 1,000 kilometres north of Helsinki and up on the Russian border. It is spectacular with its vast lakes and fantastic sauna culture. And it's cold. But second and third on the list were also cold and Nordic, and that is Denmark, followed by Iceland, Sweden, and Israel. And can I just say here, Iceland is I was chatting to my Swedish niece about this, who reminded me that Iceland is apparently, according to the OECD, the world's largest consumer of antidepressants. I'm just saying. And I've also got to raise an eyebrow at Israel being the 5th happiest country while there's a war going on there.
Yeah, well, it was actually all sunshine when I was in Denmark last year, and it was definitely a laid-back, happy vibe with everyone cruising around on bikes and sipping lattes at roadside cafes.
Nice. And keeping on the bike theme, the Netherlands came in 6th, followed by Norway, Luxembourg, Switzerland, and then Australia.
Great to see Australia. And at number 10, but it's also worth pointing out that the rankings did differ for young and old, which isn't really that surprising. So for those under 30, Lithuania came in 1st and Israel 2nd. And for those over 60, Denmark came in 1st, followed by Finland.
And since last year, the rankings have remained largely unchanged. But Costa Rica and Kuwait, interestingly, given Kuwait is the world's hottest city, or Kuwait City, they are the new entrants to the top 20. And the US and Germany dropped off the top 20. And also, interestingly, the top 10 no longer include any of the largest countries. Only the Netherlands and Australia have populations over 15 million. So small is happy, right? And we'll put the full list in the show notes and on our website, theworldawaits.au.
You're listening to The World Awaits. We'd love it if you could leave us a rating and review on your favourite podcast platform.
This week, my guest is Chris Chamberlain, senior writer for Point Hacks, which, as the name suggests, teaches you how to use frequent flyer points to help you switch the seats from the back of the plane to the front. He walks the talk. Chris has elite status with some of the world's top airlines, and he's going to tell us how we can get there too. Chris, welcome to The World Awaits. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I was just listening actually the other day to your most recent podcast with Kevin from Travel Guys. I love that show and he's so funny. So I hope we can be even half as funny as him.
He's professionally funny. Oh, don't know about that one. Let's give it a crack. Well, I mean, I can kick off with that because the reason why I really wanted to have you here on the podcast is it's purely motivated by self-interest. Basically, I'm looking for a masterclass on getting into gold class or silver or, really, I'm not picky, but without throwing gazillions of dollars at the airlines. So every time I see you on social media, you're either jumping on a plane or an airport lounge drinking champagne somewhere, or just arriving somewhere that is not home here in Melbourne. And then when I read your profile on Point Hacks, it tells me you have travelled over 2 million kilometres in business and first class, which is, as it says, more than 2 return trips to the moon. So tell me, please, how can I stop sitting down the back of the plane near the toilet and get up to the front, the more fragrant end of the plane?
Frequent flyer points. Those are the secret tools. If you don't have frequent flyer points, you are traveling wrong, I must say. So where I'm from at Point Hacks, that's exactly what we do. It's in the name. We teach people how to spend their points better, how to earn more points. And we publish some great stories based on how you can fly at the front and it actually costs you less than economy. So we did a campaign the other week where, it's a tough day in the office. My work sent me flying first class from LA to Sydney on Qantas, spending company points. And the actual cost in dollars to book that ticket is less than $300 cash. So while there'll be people, downstairs on the plane, sitting at the back of economy who've probably paid a couple of thousand, I'm in row 1 paying less than $300 drinking champagne for 15 hours. It's not that hard once you get your head around it, but so few people understand how it works, and that's where we come in to help you not have to sit right down the back near the toilets.
It is totally, it is a dark art. I mean, hacking points. I find it quite a tricky one. But before we start transforming my travel life, and hopefully everybody else who's listening along, do we need a little clarification on terminology? And that is, what is the difference between frequent flyer points versus status points?
Yeah, so frequent flyer points are the points that you earn and can spend on flights. So you might earn points from taking out a credit card or staying in a hotel, taking a flight. But these are the points that you can redeem for a flight, for an upgrade, that kind of thing. When it comes to frequent flyer status, which is whether you are silver, gold, platinum, or even higher than that, you earn something different, which in Australia, Qantas and Virgin Australia call status credits. And they cannot be spent on flights. You can earn as many status credits as you want. They're not redeemable. They exist only to work out where you sit in that frequent flyer chain. So frequent flyer points are the points that you spend. Status credits give you credit towards gold or platinum.
Right, okay. All right, well, let's get into the nuts and bolts of it. What is the quickest way to get me from the back down the toilet, up the front drinking champagne?
Well, you want to earn those points, and there are so many ways you can do it. I mean, clearly the obvious one is to fly, but people who are flying once a year for holidays, you're not going to earn that many points that quickly to achieve that. So what a lot of people do is they take every opportunity to earn points, and most of those opportunities actually exist on the ground. In fact, Qantas changed the name of its currency a few years ago from a Qantas frequent flyer point to simply a Qantas point, because more points are now earned on the ground rather than in the sky. So you can get points by doing things like applying for a credit card that has a bonus points offer, or spending on a credit card that gives you points. You can earn points staying in a hotel. You can earn points without leaving the couch by shopping online. You can earn them at the supermarket, the petrol station, you name it. There's probably a way that you're already spending money somewhere that you can turn that into frequent flyer points.
Right. So, I mean, the name of the game is loyalty, really, isn't it? And from when we were preparing for this interview, what came across to me on it was it's about loyalty and consistency. So if you are going to, and we're not the ABC, so we can name everybody here, from BWS to Coles or wherever, it's about staying like not deviating to Aldi, isn't it? Like going off
They
there.
don't do frequent flyer points. They don't even take American Express, which so many of the points people would have to earn even more. So if you want points, that's probably not the right supermarket. But I mean, like Coles has the Flybuys program, which is partnered with Velocity, and you can transfer points there. And Woolworths has Qantas Frequent Flyer attached to everyday rewards. So yes, choosing your supermarket can be a lot more rewarding. As to how much you paid, always check the price on the shelves. But definitely, if you want frequent flyer points, there are certain supermarkets that are better than others.
Yeah, it is an interesting one that you really start drawing those lines about where you do shop and where you buy your petrol and where you're ordering as to which airline you go into, which makes me take a step back onto this one because while we might be flying those airlines, I mean, I fly on every airline in the world, and some of them are just, some of them are quite ridiculous, and that have no links with anybody else. But sometimes the schedules don't fit. You're shopping around on price. I mean, for my next trip, so because it's all about me, I've got a flight coming up with Emirates. So how do I maximize my points in this situation? Do I earn the points on an Emirates loyalty program? Should I put them back onto my Australian airline? Because we've been talking about Qantas and Virgin for this one. Most of us are more likely to fly domestically over internationally. And also, if you're going to be spending points, it's easier to say, grab a flight from Sydney to Melbourne rather than saving up for a long haul to London or something like that. Is that strategy correct? Should I be flying all those other airlines and then putting the points back on my Australian ones, or have I got it all wrong?
So what a lot of people do, whether they travel a lot or whether they travel once or twice a year, is maybe pick 2 or 3 frequent flyer programs to focus on. So in Australia, it makes complete sense to be a member of Qantas Frequent Flyer and Virgin Australia Velocity. That's a no-brainer. I mean, Qantas, there are ways of joining for free. Velocity is easy to join for free online, so you may as well sign up.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to other programs, if you look at alliances and partnerships, so for Emirates, for instance, is a partner of Qantas in Australia. So as you've rightly said, you're probably more likely to end up on a lot more Qantas flights. Or if you are living in Australia, it's a lot easier to earn Qantas points in general than to earn miles with Emirates. So when I fly on Emirates, personally, I put that into my Qantas account. Right. And it's the same if you're a Velocity member and you're on Etihad. That's a partnership with Velocity, so I would put my Velocity number on that ticket. So for me, it's about focusing on the frequent flyer points where it's easier to earn more miles rather than signing up to every program under the sun to have points with every airline, because there's no point having 2,000 or 3,000 points here, a couple of thousand points there, and in the end, you've got all these points around all these programs, but you don't have enough to book a flight. Whereas if you've got them all in a neat couple of little piles, you might have enough to fly domestically. Or if you travel a lot more or earn points in other ways, you might be able to get one of those seats in row 1 across the Pacific.
Yeah, all right. But my fingers and toes are all crossed for that one. Interestingly, though, if you bring those points, if you use those Emirates points and put them back into Qantas, do I get the status credits when I do that?
So with Emirates is sort of an exception to how most of Qantas's partners work. Because Qantas is in One World, the alliance, they have rules about what can and can't happen with other partners. So in that instance, you're flying on an Emirates plane, Emirates flight number, you put your Qantas number on the ticket, you can earn points, but you won't earn status credits. So this happened to me last year, and I knew it would happen. It was the only way we could book the ticket, but I was fortunate to do Emirates business over to Europe and back. That would have been great if I could have earned status. That would have really pushed it up a notch, but you only earn points on the EK number. So you get around that by booking Emirates on a Qantas QF code share or on some of Qantas' other partners, American Airlines, British Airways, Cathay Pacific. That's where you can still earn status when you're traveling with that airline. Honestly, this is what we do at Point Hacks. There are so many little, TNCs and asterisks and everything everywhere as to what can and can't happen. And so it gets very, very complicated very quickly.
I've got to admit, I am not a fine print kind of girl, right? So that's why I want you to solve my life for me. Because one of those things, as you say, there's tricks around them and stuff like that. What's less discussed is points sales, where airlines might drop the number of points that you'll need to earn on certain flights, or they give bonuses. That's a quick way, obviously, to boost your points, is to keep an eye on the sales, because the sales aren't always, buy a flight to Devonport for $29. It's like fly this route and get bonus points, or they've got sales on the actual points that it costs to fly up to, say, to fly Sydney, Melbourne. How do you find out about all of those sorts of opportunities? Is it a secret club? Can anyone join in? Do you set a watch list like you do with flights? It is a dark art. Throw a light on it for me.
It is. I mean, other than the obvious plug of reading Point Hacks, but we don't publish everything that we come across. There are far too many. Thank you. I appreciate it. But so it depends on your airline. So with Qantas, what we generally see with points is that occasionally they might charge fewer points for certain flights, and you'll generally get an email from Qantas when they're doing that sort of promotion. And I've seen that happens often when they're about to announce a really good financial result, or on the same day that they announce the financial result, is sort of trying to show that they're sharing something with their members. So the number of points you might need to fly Qantas could drop down to what you'd normally need for Jetstar or something like that. And I've been able to pounce and do a few of those bookings myself. With Virgin Australia, they're a bit more in the points camp of giving you bonus points. So I flew from Brisbane to Melbourne just over the weekend, and I obviously activated, I've forgotten I'd even done it because it was a month ago, but I'd activated a double points promotion and opened my Velocity app after the flight. I'm like, oh, I just earned 4,000 points for that flight. Okay, that was quite rewarding. And Virgin also now, it's not dynamic pricing, which is something that people really don't like overseas, where the number of points can be completely unpredictable. But what Virgin does now when you're booking domestic economy on points is they have a range that it could cost you. And there are sort of 3 tiers. And the middle tier is basically what it used to cost before this came in. The lower tier means you need fewer points than before, and the higher tier means you need more. So if you are flying within Australia, for me, that's Melbourne to Sydney, Melbourne to Brisbane, and you look at all the flights that day and you look at all the options, you might see that even though it's the same route, same cabin, same day, one flight might cost you, 12,000 points, and a different flight on the same day might cost you about 8,000. And you're having the same experience, you're paying the same amount in taxes and fees in dollars on the side of the ticket. But if you fly at a different time, you might need fewer points. It's the same as when you buy a cash ticket with money. Taking an off-peak flight could save you money. So looking at all your options can help you save points and travel more often.
Right. And I suppose looking on the app as well is always a really great one, rather than just relying on the website, like actually digging into the detail of it. A lot of us don't just fly those 2 carriers, though. What about low-cost carriers? We've got Rex, we've got Jetstar competing just in the Australian space. Do they have a point system that I should be working? Because sometimes, sometimes their scheduling just works, particularly coming out of Melbourne. If I don't want to do the 6 a.m. commuter red-eye specials, but I also need to get up there before midday, so 10 o'clock is too late. So sometimes you'll find that they can be the better airlines just in terms of when they run. Do they have anything that we should have on our radar?
They do. Well, a couple of them do. So Jetstar is owned by Qantas, and so they're part of Qantas Frequent Flyer. But the way that I don't want to say the way that they get you, but the thing to be aware of with Jetstar is that when you're on the cheapest ticket, the seat-only fare where nothing is included, that also means points are not included. So you have to buy one of the bundles that gives you a few other benefits and puts points on top. So if you're on the cheapest tickets, you won't earn anything on that. Bonza does not have a points program at this point, but Rex recently launched a program. It's in its early stages. You can only earn points by flying, and you can only spend those points on flights. You can't earn those points through a credit card or anything, but I was really fortunate. I've taken a couple of paid tickets on Rex, and I figured, well, I may as well earn some points on these. And I needed to fly from Melbourne to Brisbane at the beginning of the Australia Day long weekend, which is when the tennis is on, there's everyone flying, and of course, I'm trying to spend my Qantas points, my Velocity points. Couldn't find a seat that I could book on that day, and I went over to the Rex website with enough points in my account. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can get a ticket today for, I think it was like $40 or something, which included baggage and everything else by spending my points, because they probably don't have the largest membership compared to Qantas at this stage. People don't have anywhere near as many points to spend, and I could choose any flight that day I wanted, pay this tiny number of points. I was very happy. So I want to earn more points with them, but I can't without flying on them. So that's their next thing to develop. I'd love to see them come out with a credit card, because that would really shake up Qantas and Velocity.
Oh, that sounds amazing, because recently I had to fly with Rex, but it was on the Taylor Swift weekend. And let me tell you, there were no bargains. There was not a bargain in the sky. Now, we've been talking about earning. What about burning points? Apart from, what's the best way to use those points if you've got them? Like me, Qantas, an inordinate amount of points, no status, still sitting, down the back with the toilet. Do you blow those points on in-flight shopping, buying a back massager, a food processor, or using them to buy an actual flight? Or, and here's the sub-question, should you just use those points for add-ons on the flight, such as upgrades? You could even put them on a hotel stay. Qantas, as you know, has a very strong hotel deals offering. So what's the best way? Because points actually have a value. I think that's something that we forget. They actually are a form of currency, aren't they?
Yeah, so they don't have a defined value, which is probably more of a tax thing for the airlines. And it depends on how you redeem them as to how much, value you'll get in terms of how much cash you would save. The thing that I always try and do is spend my frequent flyer points on flights and spend my hotel points, because the hotels have programs as well, spend my hotel points booking rooms at a hotel. And I find that's generally the best value, followed by using points to upgrade on a flight. So for me, if there is a seat in the cabin that I'm happy to fly and I can book that using points when I need to go somewhere, that's what I always prefer to do, even if it's economy. I used to think that was not the best value, and to be fair to the airlines, it probably wasn't. They used to charge you very high fees. The number of points you needed even to fly economy was quite high, and when you compared the cost of the cash ticket, it didn't make sense. But now the airlines have clued into that a bit more in the way, Virgin's reduced the number of points you need on some flights. The charges are a bit lower. So, I flew yesterday, Brisbane back home to Melbourne, and I booked that in economy on points. Again, spent $40 on the flight for a fare that would have cost $200. So in my head, I've just saved $160 by spending some points. But when you are flying as well, for me, I'm happy to do economy on a short flight, or a daytime flight to Asia is fine. If I'm doing an overnight flight and I have the points, though, who doesn't want that bed on the plane? And that's when the value of points really comes in, because sure, you can save some cash rather than having to pay for an economy ticket, but most of us don't have sort of money sitting around to buy full fare business or first class long haul whenever we need to travel. But if you've saved up a nice balance of points, you might be able to do that without breaking the bank.
Right. So if you are going for that upgrade, and there is that saying, if you don't ask, you don't get. When do you ask? I mean, you're in a league of your own. You have an inordinate amount of points everywhere, and by being a member of those frequent flyer programs means that the airline is going to look at you more benevolently than if you are, a diehard on the opposite side of the team. But for the rest of us, with mediocre balances, how's the best way to get that upgrade? Do we bid online? Do we go to the information desk when we're checking in? Do we even buy it in flight on the plane? Which is the best way to do it?
So if you're spending points, the best way is to try and get that upgrade well before you're at the airport. So generally, if we're flying domestically, from the time you've booked, you might be able to upgrade using your points online, and you might be able to confirm that upgrade at the time of your request. So that happens with Qantas and Virgin. So if you have enough points, they have a seat available for an upgrade, which doesn't mean that they're just selling a seat. They decide how many upgrades and things they want to process on each flight. But you may be able to get that upgrade by sitting in your lounge room, almost a year before the flight. Other ways you can do it if you don't have as many points is that the airlines, as you said, will accept bids as well. So you can, depending on the airline, bid cash, you can bid dollars, or sometimes a combination of them both. And the airlines will normally process those after the points upgrade. So it's better to have points. But if you don't have points, and I've done this a lot too, even if I have had points, I just didn't want to spend them. You just put a bid in. I often just put the minimum bid or the minimum bid plus $5 to outbid everyone else who's just done the minimum bid. And if there are seats, it tends to be quite successful. So I think I've had like a Melbourne-Brisbane upgraded for less than $100 one day, and I was very happy with that. But that's not really the norm. So some airlines, I think Emirates will let you upgrade on board. You can try and upgrade at the gate. If you get on the plane and you're in a middle seat, or you really don't like your seatmate and you have points in their Skywards program, you can go have a quiet word with the crew and say, how many miles do I need to go not sit here and sit somewhere else? And at that point, if there is any seat available on the plane, they will happily take those miles off you, because they're about to close the door and earn nothing for that ticket. So if they can take some miles off your hand and fill an empty seat, they'll take them off you. But you have to ask. So if you can't get it before the flight, ask at check-in. If you can't get it at check-in, ask in the lounge, or if you don't have lounge access, just go to the service desk at the airport and just ask, can I use my Qantas points, Velocity points, whatever currency you have with the airline you're flying? see what they say. The worst they can do is say, "Oh, I'm sorry, there are no upgrades available," and you're still sitting where you were 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, right. I mean, I've been unlucky. I don't know. Every time I try to get a minimum bid, the starting point is at $500 or something like that. But then, Kirsty and I were talking about this beforehand, and she brought her whole family up to a premium economy on Air New Zealand, and premium economy on Air New Zealand is the equivalent of, is better than business class for many carriers. And she paid only about $100 a person. So they were doing, across to New Zealand, and I think on a night flight, which I think sounds absolutely fantastic. So I'm going to try that. I just wanted to ask you a little bit about credit cards, because when we've talked about this in the past, you have always said that credit cards really are a way of ramping up your points, like giving them an absolute jump. So can you just explain a little bit about how to? I mean, we are manipulated by credit cards. How do we manipulate the credit cards back?
So, I mean, when you're earning points on a credit card, it's always just worth flagging right up front that the cards that earn points generally have the highest interest rates of any other types of credit cards in Australia. So the people that want to earn points off cards like myself, the strategy generally should be pay off the card every month in full. So firstly, if you're not going to be paying off your card in full, if it's better to carry a balance, then frequent flyer cards probably aren't the right fit. I just want to say that up front because that's very important. But if you are in a position to be paying off your cards in full, something to look into and to consider is that many cards will offer you frequent flyer points, and not just on the money that you spend every day, but it can be possible to earn a large number of points just by taking out a new card, applying for it, being accepted for it, and making a minimum spend on the card, which often is in the range of a few $1,000s. So some people might do that, put all their household bills on the card, make sure they hit their bonus points offer, and then they also then have a card in their wallet to keep earning points on as they keep spending. And it's fair to say that people's financial needs change from time to time, and this is not personal financial advice, but it's the fact that you may want to keep looking at credit cards, because you might get a card that's very travel themed if you're doing a lot of trips, and then suddenly you might not travel as far anymore. So you might not need a card that gives you all the lounge access and hotel status, and that might be another time to consider applying for a new product. So there are a lot of ways to earn points through cards, but even just using the card for everything. For me, I don't carry cash. I put everything I can on my points earning credit cards, pay the bills off in full. Then you have all these rewards ready to spend. And even if there's a very small surcharge to use a card, I still find it worth it because I get more value out of my points than what the fee normally is to make that payment. But some people can earn 150,000 points by signing up to one credit card. It's a very easy way of getting a nice little sum of points. And at Point Hacks, we focus on all of those latest deals. We sometimes negotiate deals with the banks that are better than what the bank will offer its own customers. So we can offer no annual fee sometimes, or even more points for having one card. So there are, always keep your eyes out for the latest deals and just see what's available. And don't be afraid to reconsider if the cards you're currently using are not doing what they should for you in terms of.
Well, I think that's one of the that financial hygiene is now being beaten into our heads now that we're all looking more closely at things like our mortgages and reassessing our financial positions too. That is a really valid point. So credit cards, looking at where you're spending, even Coles and Woolworths have their own alliances with the airlines as well. Now I'm going to ask you the last question, which is a question we ask all of our guests, and that is, what is your most bizarre travel experience? It does not have to include a plane or a business class or a first class experience, but I'd really love it. Just go ahead.
Oh, yeah, they're related but unrelated. Look, for me, it's the coincidences of travel. So I often was flying to London on business a lot before COVID, and I had a really good friend who used to live in Brisbane, and I would see him all the time in Brisbane. He then moved to Melbourne, and despite all the travel I was doing, we were just never in the same place. But somehow, him living in Melbourne, me living in Brisbane, we always ended up being in London without even trying at exactly the same time. So even if I was in London for one day and I would send a message, he would happen to just be there on business at the same time. And this just happened time and time again for years and years. And the coincidences just got just so, bizarre. Like I was in London, it was a very big trip. I was over in New York. I'd flown into London in the afternoon. I had one night in London, and the next morning I was off to Taipei for another meeting. And I texted him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm here. And oh, by the way, it's opening night of Chess the musical at the Coliseum. I have a spare ticket." And it was the night the guys from ABBA were going to come on stage at the end. I'm like, okay, so I'm literally here for 24 hours, and you're here, and half of ABBA is here. And it's just, he was always in the same city. And then last year, I hadn't been to London since 2019. Obviously, COVID happened and I hadn't raced back.
Yeah.
And so mid-2013, I was meant to be flying to Oslo, and I was doing it because I had used points. It was a bit of a convoluted way of getting there. I was flying Sydney to LA, oh gosh, what was it, up to Copenhagen to Helsinki to Oslo or something, because that's where I could get a seat. Qantas had delayed my flight by 12 hours, and so I'd rebooked all my connections, via London it ended up being, and then they had changed my flight back to remove the cancellation after I had just rebooked all the other tickets, and I couldn't get my original seats back. And so I wasn't meant to have any time in London, and I land in LA at 8 in the morning. My flight to London leaves at midnight, and I go up to the very nice person at the American Airlines service desk. I'm like, I have a very long connection. Can I get to London any earlier and just, maybe spend a day in London? And they press buttons on their computer and they actually had a seat, and they were able to change it for me. And I land at Heathrow. I turn my phone on. I'm on Facebook, and I see he's checked in London. He's like, "Oh, great business trip to London. I'm off to Heathrow now to fly home," right as I've touched down at Heathrow. So we're going to be literally in the same building at the same time. I'm like, oh my gosh, and we just went and got a coffee, and I hadn't seen him for a couple of years. And of course, the one time I'm in London in 4 years is when he's at the airport again. So hi, Jared. Tell me when you're next in London. I'll probably see you there.
That's a shout out to Jared. That is absolutely fantastic. Chris, I love your life. I watch it with great glee. Where can people, if anyone wants to follow you on Instagram and see the fabulous things that you do, how do they do that?
So I'm at Chris_Chamberlain on Instagram, and our company account is PointHacksAU.
Fantastic.
So we have content on both.
Gorgeous. All right. Well, I shall follow along to see where I see you next. Maybe it'll actually be in Melbourne, which is where we both are. So thanks so much for joining us on The World Awaits. It's been gorgeous to have you here.
Thanks very much for having me, Belle.
That was Chris Chamberlain from Point Hacks website. I'm amazed at just how much he actually travels. 2 million kilometres. And you can read more of his tips on how to fly in first class, as well as his flight and airport reviews at pointhacks.com.au.
Our tip this week is the best place to experience Leonardo da Vinci's work when you're in Milan. And the tip comes from the Loom Digital Art Gallery in Melbourne. Its current exhibition is Leonardo da Vinci, 500 Years of Genius, which I visited as part of a press preview recently.
I haven't managed to get there, but it looks amazing. How was it?
It was so uplifting. You're surrounded by enormous displays of his art and ideas, which are projected onto the walls, introducing us to Da Vinci's incredible mind. Everybody knows that he invented the precursor to the helicopter, and he painted the Mona Lisa, but he also invented the scuba diving suit, which actually blows my mind, right? Armoured tanks, and he was a fashion designer.
Oh.
So I know, he had it all going on. So from the very large to the very detailed, the exhibition also includes original drawings and writings from his 12-volume set of books, the Codex Atlanticus, which was written in Da Vinci's own hand, describing some of his inventions. And it's the first time these writings have been brought from Australia from their home in the Biblioteca Ambrosiana in Milan.
Wow, that's so cool. So it's a real mix, right, of ancient and modern technology?
Yeah, exactly. While I was at the media launch, I met Alberto Rocco, the director of the Biblioteca Ambrosiana, and I asked him how we can find Da Vinci or how we can feel him when we're visiting Milan. He told me that Da Vinci spent about 19 years living in Milan in the late 1400s, so you should visit the medieval Castello Sforzesco. He painted scenes on some of the walls, and he also designed the gates and water channels around it. And it also holds another of Da Vinci's books, another codex. And here's a little trivia tip. Bill Gates bought another of Da Vinci's books, the Codex Leicester, for about $30 million back in 1980, due to conspiracy theories. So Alberto Rocco also recommends visiting the Cenacolo Vinciano, which is a museum dedicated to his painting The Last Supper, as well as Rocco's own, the museum that Rocco is the director of, the Ambrosiana, which has the largest collection of Leonardo's notebooks, some of which are currently on loan to the Loom in Melbourne, so you can see those writings. The Ambrosiana also exhibits the unfinished portrait of a musician, and Alberto told me that Da Vinci was physically present here in this room, which is pretty amazing.
That's so cool. And back here in Australia, you can visit the exhibition that we've been talking about, Leonardo da Vinci, 500 Years of Genius, at the Loom Melbourne at the Convention Centre in South Wharf. Check their website at theloommelbourne.com, and we'll put that link in the show notes.
And why don't you follow us on Instagram at The World Awaits Podcast, or look for us on TikTok and YouTube.
Just look for our smiling faces and bright orange and pink shirts. Next week, I chat with one of the most influential women in travel, Tourism Tasmania's CEO Sarah Clark, about how travellers can make sure they continue to protect Tassie's pristine environment and some secret spots you may have never heard of.
And if you would like to help support our production costs, you can buy us a coffee or a chai latte at coffee.com, which is ko-fi.com/The World Awaits, so we can continue to bring you inspirational travel interviews with the world's best and caffeinate us as well. That's a wrap for The World Awaits this week. Click to subscribe anywhere you listen to your favourite pods. And where can people find you, Kirsty?
I'm at Kirsty Writes on Instagram. That's KIRSTIE Writes, WRITES. And where can people find you, Belle?
You can find me at globalsalsa.com or on Insta at global_salsa.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.